talking about the General Conference and the Act of Repentance coming up in Tampa, Florida this spring. Many people are asking questions about the Act of Repentance. What does it mean? How does it relate to Native and Indigenous peoples here in the United States and around the world? And people puzzle over why there is a need for such an act, a time for remembering the relationship of the United Methodist Church to Native and Indigenous peoples. There's a lot of history to be recovered. There's a lot of history to be remembered. Indigenous Native people in the United States now are not very visible. The other racial ethnic persons who make up some of the membership of our church are highly visible, but not Native people. And in addition to that, Native people in this country, as well as Indigenous peoples around the world, are facing an historic trauma, the likes of which very few in any other cultural or racial ethnic context could possibly understand. The invasion of America, as some authors have expressed it, the time when immigration began, almost 500 years ago, into North America. The extended immigration patterns that brought newcomers to other lands and nations and countries where inhabitants were already living. We have, in this country, Native Americans, experienced great deprivations by the presence of the new immigrants. And for all of this time, through 500 years, and even into the present, up until this very moment, Native peoples in the United States are experiencing and living out the trauma of that history. There seems to be no reconciliation for it. And the church has played a key role in all of it. When the church first came to these new worlds, as they were called, and particularly to this continent, they became involved with the making of nation and the political power structures that were formed around nation making. Christianity in many ways became part and parcel of these new governments, state governments, colonial governments, and ultimately the federal government. And the church worked with the federal government. Since the time our missions began here in the United States, which nearly coincided with the formation of the Constitution of the United States of America, the church was involved with the federal government. The church supported the policies of the federal government. Both had similar motives in mind. Both had similar goals in mind. Both needed to vanquish the people, the Native people, the American Indians, for the sake of land and power and settling new immigrants into even further Western territories. So the church played a key role as a partner in that process, a partner that ultimately oppressed Native people, ultimately led to their extinction nearly, led to genocidal policies that were completely violent, destroying individuals and families and communities and tribes and Native nations. The United Methodist Church needs to acknowledge this wrong. Other churches were complicit in this as well, but the United Methodist Church played a great role in all of this, an equal role with any of the other churches in the United States, and by extension in territories throughout the world. The United Methodist Church has, through this moment, through this time, even in its missions, even in its outreach, not completely nor adequately recognized its role in the lives of people who are still hurting. And so it's important for us to understand the role of the church in the lives of people and the damage that we have done as a church, over the past 200 years or more. And until we do, We will not be able to heal. The United Methodist Church will not be able to heal. Native nations, indigenous populations will not be able to heal. And so this is a new beginning. This is a time to look at who we are in light of a new future with each other. And only as repentance is enunciated, even as forgiveness is granted, even as atonement is achieved, will we be able to open to each other and participate in each other's healing. And that will make a difference. That will make a difference to the native populations and to the indigenous populations, and it will make a difference to the United Methodist Church. The United Methodist Church is faced today by a unique population growth with populations of native racial and ethnic people in the United Methodist Church. It is no longer the great and awesome majority culture church that it was once upon a time. And we are ever in need of reconciliation and finding ways to work with each other and to become each other's sisters and brothers in the faith. The church can now reach out in different ways once we have acknowledged who we are and the healing process that needs to emanate from this great experience. Participating in each other's healing is not going to be an easy task, because it means that we, the United Methodist Church, must change who it has been, and we need to put in place processes and programs and practices through the Council of Bishops, through the annual conferences, through the boards and agencies, reaching even into our local churches to make a difference, to bring about a consciousness that does not exist now. It does not exist in the Council of Bishops. It does not exist in our annual conferences. And it does not exist in our local churches. And it's important for the United Methodist Church to engage with our communities, both here in the United States and elsewhere throughout the world, and in Asian nations, in the Philippines, for example, in Japan, in the Nordic nations, in Norway, and other places where Native people and indigenous people exist. It's important for the United Methodist Church to understand those communities if it expects to live with them in harmony. If it expects itself to live in a way that is equal, sharing in the bounty of hope and faith, sharing the word, preaching and teaching the gospel of Jesus Christ. If the United Methodist Church simply imposes its will, as it has through all of these generations, it will make no difference, and the people will not pay attention, and the people will not want to be a part of it, because the people have to fulfill their own expectations of themselves. They must be aware of and concerned about issues of self-determination, and in some cases issues of sovereignty, as in the United States, where our people are sovereign nations. So it is in the best interest of the United Methodist Church, and more than that, it's in the best interest of the Church in order to witness in honest ways to the gospel without subduing nations or dominating cultures, but sharing in the love of Christ. Native people and indigenous people around the world are already bringing to the United Methodist Church a rich understanding of spirituality that has been hard to find until we have opened our hearts and opened our minds to the possibilities, to the participation, and to the teachings that indigenous and native people bring into the church. Perhaps one day we will be able to sit together as brothers and sisters, valuing each other's heritage, loving each other's contributions, bringing to the church a way of serving Christ that is unified and reflective of the gospel that he came to share with us.